Welcome to On the Middle East, our Monitor's weekly podcast on major developments happening across the region. My name is Amrin Zaman and I'm a senior correspondent for Al Monitor. And this week's guest is Arzu Yilmaz, a visiting scholar at Hamburg University and a leading expert on the Kurds, who's done extensive fieldwork in Turkey, Iraq and Syria. Before moving to Germany, Arzu was the chair of the Department of International Relations at the American University of Kurdistan in Duhok, where she taught for 7 years. She's contributed to numerous academic publications and has written a book on Kurdish refugees. Arzu and I will be discussing the impact of Turkey's ever-expanding military footprint in Iraq. So welcome to the show, Arzu. It's great to have you on.
Thanks for having me, Amberin.
Over the weekend, Turkey launched yet another military operation in Iraqi Kurdistan against the Kurdistan Workers Party, or the PKK. The number of Turkish military operations in Iraq seem to be increasing all the time. Turkey likes to publicize them, despite the fact that they're hugely destabilizing for Iraqi Kurdistan. However, it said almost nothing about a recent attack on Turkish forces in Bashika, northeast of Mosul. That attack is widely believed to have been carried out by Iranian-backed popular mobilization units, or the Hashdi Shabi. Tensions are also brewing between Turkey and Iran in the majority Yazidi region of Sinjar or Shingal, where the PKK and Iran-backed militias have a tactical alliance. And Turkey keeps threatening to mount a major attack against the PKK in Sinjar. So are Turkey and Iran on the brink of some kind of confrontation in Iraq? And if so, why?
First of all, I think it will make sense to remember the dimensions which has caused a policy shift in Turkey's foreign policy in Iraq, which dates to the 1990s. Because if we can't understand what has happened since 1990s, then I don't think that we can have a better understanding about the things taking place today. So given that, I first of all would like to underline that I don't agree with the analysis indicating Turkey's policy as a security-based policy. Because in my point of view, since the 1990s, yes, keeping pressure on the PKK has always been Turkey's primary priority. And given that, yes, it has been a security-based policy, but at the same time, playing a leadership role in the Middle East in the context of the New World Order has also been another important dimension of Turkey's policy in Iraq. And in that sense, a security-based approach has developed hand in hand with expansionist aspirations to this day. Given the recent developments on the field, I think there is a kind of consensus between Iran and Turkey because Iran has already gained huge advantages in Iraq, which seems irreversible to me. Not only in South, but since 2017, Iran is also the dominant actor in disputed areas. And in turn, Turkey seems that Turkey is allowed to move free in military terms in Kurdish populated north, and disputed areas seems to be the red line for Turkey. And that's, I think, the attack on Bashika or the tensions in Shingal simply gives signal to Turkey that the disputed areas is a red line for you. You have a free hand in Kurdish populated north, because at the end of the day, this helps the ill-fated, let's say, efforts for reconstruction of Iraq, which is based on centralization of power, because Turkish military operations are obviously enhancing such efforts, and Baghdad's claim to take control over northern borders or border gates.
Ultimately, where Iran and Turkey certainly agree in Iraq is that the Kurds should never become independent. And we saw that come into extremely sharp relief during the referendum in 2017. And so at the end of the day, would you say that that's what really keeps Turkey and Iran in agreement over Iraq, that that's the baseline?
This is what I see in Iraq. I mean, when you see what's taking place on the ground, Turkey, for instance, since the military operations Turkey implementing since 2018, it gained space on the ground like 60 kilometers deep in Iraq. So if we also consider the disengagement of overall, if we also consider the disengagement of the US from the Middle East as a whole, but particularly from Iraq, then what can explain such a picture? As of today, you may also know that the number of Turkish troops is more than the number of American troops in Iraq. So how
can you put a number on that?
It is supposed to be not less than 5,000. Unfortunately, we don't have any official data, about the number of troops of Turkey. But it is, if we depend on, for instance, Binali Yıldırım's statement a couple years ago, and consider the other military bases Turkey have built up in last 2 years' time, it should be more than 5,000.
So Binali Yıldırım is a former prime minister, by the way.
Yes, former prime minister. If I'm not mistaken, in 2018, he said Turkey has like 2,500 troops in Iraq. And in that statement, he said they decided to double the number of the troops, which means 5,000. But afterwards, Turkey built new military bases, then, which helps me to claim that the number should be more than 5,000. So Shingal, as part of disputed areas, for sure, Turkey will be in pursuit of controlling Shingal, but I don't think it would be possible. Shingal is important for all parts, basically because of its geographical location. Whoever controls Shingal would have an upper hand, not only in Iraq, but also in Syria. For instance, security of both Rojava and Bashur could not be guaranteed without Peshmerga or guerrilla presence in Shingal. This is actually what I have heard from the prominent military officials in the KRG and northeast Syria.
Can I just jump in and explain that Rojava is Syrian Kurdistan and Bashur is Iraqi Kurdistan?
In terms of trade routes, particularly Rabia Gate, for instance, is another dimension which makes Shingal important. And finally, flow of oil. For instance, 25% of Iraqi oil flows through Kirkuk-Ceyhan pipeline. Imagine reconstruction of Kirkuk-Banyas, which goes through Iraq, Syria to Mediterranean. This would inevitably risk the significance of Kirkuk-Ceyhan pipeline. So Turkey's interest in Shingal is not merely security because of its security concern regarding the PKK's presence, but also because of controlling both sides of Shingal, which means Syria and Iraq.
But Turkey's stated reason for, wanting to conduct a military operation in Sinjar is the PKK, the PKK presence there. The PKK has been there since 2014, since it intervened to help rescue the Yazidis from the Islamic State. And they've never left. That's what Turkey says. And it also says that Sinjar is a sort of a logistic pathway between Kandil and Rojava. Do you agree that Sinjar is of great significance for the PKK in terms of being able to maintain its connectivity between Kandil at the very eastern extreme on the Iranian border with Syria?
I think so. And this is why I gave you an example of my interviews with the military officials, saying that the security of Sinjar is crucial for the security of Northeast Syria and the security of the KRG. So for sure, it's also a connection logistically. It's also an important connection point between Kandil and between the Syria, Kurdistan, and so forth. We should not ignore Turkey's aggressive expansionist policy. And within this context, it is also important to point out how Turkey instrumentalizes the Kurdish case as a whole, both in Iraq and Syria, to pave the way for its expansion in the Middle East, and today, for instance, in Sinjar.
Given the importance of Sinjar to Iran, particularly in terms of enabling its access to Syria, wouldn't the United States support Turkish actions against the PKK and by extension against Iranian-backed militias in Sinjar? In other words, wouldn't the United States support a Turkish military operation in Sinjar?
This is not clear yet. This is also very much related with United States policy in Syria, because letting Turkey to conduct a military operation in Sinjar would inevitably give an upper hand to Turkey in north of Syria also. And we are not still sure about the US policy concerning northeast Syria. And I think this is also very much related with Turkey-US relations, regardless what happens on the ground in Iraq. Because as you know, and you also follow the Turkey, and there are very serious structural conflicts, problems between US and Turkey. If we follow the rationale you have raised, then US would also pave the way for Turkish incursion in Kirkuk, or in other Mosul, for instance. We know, for instance, in 2017, Turkey was so much keen to be a part of the operation against ISIS in Mosul, but it was rejected. And for instance, I remember I was in Iraqi Kurdistan when Hajdi Shabi took the control over Tel Afer. Turkey was so angry, but United States rejected Turkey's involvement. So why wouldn't it be true for Sinjar? I mean, this US policy concerning Iraq, concerning Iran in Iraq is not just black and white. There are too much gray areas. So Sinjar is one of them.
So if we go back to Turkey's ongoing military operations against the PKK in Iraqi Kurdistan and more recently in Syria, we see that the PKK is under more pressure than it's ever been, particularly because of Turkish drones, which have reversed the balance of power in Libya and helped Azerbaijan defeat Armenia in Nagorno-Karabakh. So can Turkey defeat the PKK militarily now? Is that realistic?
Actually, it is not easy to answer this question because PKK's, presence or fate is not limited with Turkey's, military operations. Turkey has won such military victories against PKK many times in past, but it couldn't, at the end of the day, defeat the PKK. PKK reformed and reconstructed itself again and again, and has succeeded to keep vivid for 40 years in the Middle East. But in terms of Turkey's policy towards the PKK, I would also like to underline Turkey's very comprehensive, military operation. It is not limited with the air strikes or ground operations in Iraq. For instance, in last 3 years, Turkey deliberately targeted potential leadership cadres of the PKK in last 3 years' time, and one by one killed those potential PKK leaders, assassinated, actually. Assassination of some very important profiles, some important, significant persons, fighters in the PKK. On the other hand, as you know, what happens in Turkey in terms of the HDP and so forth. On the other hand, in Rojava, even European Parliament in its last report pointed out that what Turkey is doing in Afrin particularly, or in Grecipi and Tel Abyad, is a kind of is actually an ethnic cleansing. So this is quite a comprehensive policy, not limited merely with military attacks. This is happening in front of the eyes of all stakeholders, and simply put, no one seems have any objection to that. But would it, at the end of the day, help Turkey to defeat the PKK? I don't think so. Depending on the historical background, I don't think, yes, of course, PKK has, Turkey succeeded in weakening PKK to some extent, but erasing, as Turkey claims, I don't think that would be possible.
Well, that was a fascinating discussion, Arzu. Thank you so very much for being on this show, and we look forward to hosting you again in the future.
Thank you, Amberi.
I'm Ben Caspit, Al Monitor veteran columnist reporting from Israel, one of the world's major news and action suppliers of all times, comparing to its tiny size. I've been covering and analyzing the political, diplomatic, and military arenas in Israel for over 34 years. My best-selling biography, The Netanyahu Years, was out 2 years ago. I covered 7 prime ministers, 1 major war, 2 intifadas, 1 prime minister's assassination, 2.5 peace treaties, 4 military operations in Gaza, and it's not letting up anytime soon. I'm glad to invite you to On Israel, our brand new podcast, where we will discuss major events in Israel and its surroundings, talk to decision makers, leaders, and analysts, and try to understand the chaos that comes with the territory of Israel and the Middle East. You will never have a dull moment with us. See you soon here on Israel, Al Monitor.
So this brings us to the end of this week's edition of On the Middle East. I look forward to being back with another amazing guest in the coming weeks. Thank you and goodbye.